And we're live. What's up, Kingdom of Rock? Wow, it's been a minute since we've had one of these broadcasts. We took a little bit of a siesta to get organized and get a few things lined up here as we get ready to launch our brand new season. We're still in the middle of a COVID crisis. I'm Matt Gibson, host of Kingdom of Rock. My co-host down there, Michael Molenda. What's going on, Mike?
Hey.
How's life in San Francisco?
Everything, it's sunny. Everything's groovy.
I thought it was only sunny in Philadelphia.
No, it's sunny in San Francisco as well. Actually, I'm not even in San Francisco. I'm down the peninsula, so I'm a suburban rat at this point. Oops.
Well, and today we have Pete Anderson, guitarist extraordinaire. How's it going, brother?
I'm good.
LA based.
Yep. Trying to stay out of the way. I was going to make a T-shirt called "No Masks, No Music."
Yeah, that's good.
You got to wear a mask. I saw a thing on Facebook last weekend of the Santa Monica beach, and it was just full of people, looked like Mardi Gras with no masks on. And now we have this gigantic spike, and it affects me in Glendale. I mean, I can't go play a club until these people, these yahoos at Santa Monica Beach, decide they're going to wear a mask. I'm so distraught by that attitude.
It does boggle the mind, but as Matt mentioned, thanks for being the star that kind of gets us back going. You're the star of the new season here, so thank you for starting this out.
I should have shaved.
Yeah, that makes two of us.
It's the COVID beard.
Yeah, exactly.
But actually, to that point though, Matt and I have discussed early on as we've watched this thing develop through these episodes. And of course, it started out with everybody hopeful that we're going to be gigging in May, which seems like an insane thing to think about at this point. But what are your, what's your kind of scene as far, are you optimistic that, the clubs are going to open up and that we're going to be smart about how we get our audiences back? Or do you have reservations about how the music community is going to open up?
Well, I have a couple of yardsticks on this. I'm old enough to remember being in grade school and getting my polio shots. So, polio was a death sentence. I mean, if you got polio in the 50s, it was bad. It took about 3 years with Jonas Salk and to get the right inoculation right and everything for people. Mm-hmm. But if I talk to, like to Matt about polio, he's kind of go, "What's polio, bro?" I mean,
isn't that a game with a ball and some horses and stuff?
Yeah.
It's been eradicated. So I think with proper leadership, we would have been told, that look, this is an epidemic. The last time it happened, this happened. The last time this happened, don't get your hopes up. Da 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 da. And I truly think with the way that this pandemic has been politicized, it's now politics. I wear a MAGA hat. I don't wear a mask. It's been made a political statement, and because of that, I feel that I don't know when. I know that it will come back. I'm hoping for myself and people that are younger than me that are playing that it comes back even healthier, where people appreciate what they lost. It's like people love live music. Live music has an effect on the human body. I was on tour with my band quite a few years ago, and I was up by where Michael lives, and I went on what's the hip station in Berkeley that busted Reagan and all that stuff?
Okay, Stan, I think, was that it? Or
it was not the one, I don't know what it is. It's like the ultra liberal station.
Yeah, they're kind of all gone now, so I've forgotten.
Right. So we had a thing at a theater, and they said, "We want you to play. We're going to do a live radio show. You're going to play at the theater," and the Dalai Lama was on the show. The Dalai Lama, and that was when he was having those problems with China, and China was coming after Tibet, and there was this political thing going on, and he was there with his monks. And so, I mean, I'm like standing 10 feet away from the guy. We're backstage, and it's kind of like Dalai Lama, blah, 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 Pete Anderson, blah, 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 and there was an audience, right? And they did this chant, and it just like, I just got goosebumps of just up and down my arms, just standing near it. So trying to control understand those kind of forces and trying to like control that stuff, it's just so difficult to make people understand what we have to do and how we have to do it. And it's been so long that we've been fed this greedy soup that everybody should get this and everybody gets that and nobody gives back. I mean, we're in a horrible situation. I know it will get better. Music has power. Just like that chanting, it has power. I play music. I had a friend come to visit me many years ago, and I was playing a big, it was like Taste of Milwaukee. It was a summer festival. And we were with Dwight, and we were at our height. It was packed, the place, 7,000 people. And my buddy that I grew up with was there, Billy Edwards, and his son, they lived out in the woods, and his son was like 12 years old. So his son comes up to me and he goes, Mr. Anderson, I said, "Oh, call me Pete." He said, "I'm just here to support my dad. I don't really like country music, but out of respect to my dad, I wanted to come down here and see this." And I'm like, it's okay, Jesse. Yeah, just have some fun. And we were backstage doing catering. Anyway, we hit the show and it's like, "From Hollywood, California, Dwight Yoakam." And we come out and we're rocking and we're, playing some up-tempo Little Sister, something, just blowing the doors off it. When that show got done, that kid was following, he was on my tail. Everywhere I turned, it was like there, he was like, I never saw anything like that. I never saw anything like that. And it's like, even though you're 12 years old, you don't like the music, the power of live music, I think, is undeniable. So I'm hoping that, the other thing is like, when they talked to Ray Charles and he was writing it in his book, the book he did in the late 50s, and he was becoming a hit, and he was playing New York and the place was packed, and they said, "Hey Ray, Dizzy Gillespie's here." And Dizzy was at his peak with that Afro-Cuban stuff, and Ray Charles says, "What the hell do I care if Dizzy Gillespie's here? I'm not playing for Dizzy Gillespie. I don't care if Dizzy Gillespie likes me or don't like me. I'm here for the people." So we play to the layman. I don't play to guitar players. I want to play to the mom and dad that read USA Today and go out on the weekend. Those are the people you want to round up and play to. I want to play to the average American listener, American music. So when those people figure out, wow, this is gone. I mean, I'm just like itching to go somewhere. And I think that hopefully when this bounces back, it's going to bounce back strong. I know a bunch of clubs are going to go out of business. It's going to funnel some stuff down. Then hopefully it'll expand. But that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that there's a new appreciation of music. And when it happens, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's not till next year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Pete, go ahead, Mike.
What would get you out back in the club today? I mean, just your personal feelings. Like, what would the club have to offer you to make sure you and your band were safe and your audience was safe for you to go out, tomorrow and play a club?
I don't think it's possible under these circumstances, unfortunately. I was gearing up for it. I was hoping that it was going to happen like 2 or 3 weeks ago, because things seemed to be dying down. I don't have a graph in front of me, but I felt like they were dying down, and I made some exploratory calls to like, could I get back and da. And I just, I don't see how it's possible. And the other thing, like, I was commenting about the NBA season to some friends of mine, and I think this is another byproduct of learning, aging, getting older. But if it's that hard to do something, you got to sit here, you put the plastic there, you got to get this guy here, you got to do that. It's like every other 2 other seats. Dude, let's just not do this. This isn't going to work. I mean, this basketball thing where they're going to Orlando and they're going to be in a bubble and they've already tested right. Like, I think, 9 or 10 of these guys already have COVID. So when they get it, they got to quarantine for 14 days. And it's just too much to do to make it really work. And I can't imagine playing where every other 3 seats is empty. My goal was to get everybody in the seats, right? And that energy transfer that you get. Like, I've played football stadiums, I've played hockey rinks, I've played, small bars, little clubs. The House of Blues, which is about 1,000 people, stages up front, the gallery or the balcony is pretty close. You can see right up and say, oh, there's this guy on the balcony, that guy on the balcony. That's like the perfect seat. largest place I think music should be in. I don't think music should be in hockey arenas. I don't think it should be in football stadiums. It's not the same. Is it a spectacle? Yeah. But is it the music, the visceral thing that we feel? No, it's not. And so saying that, I could come back and play, but we'll put up a plastic shield. Everybody's got to wear masks. You got to wear gloves. I can take off my mask to sing, but I have to have a splash shield in front of me, and you got to have 6 feet apart from the audience. That's what would have to happen. And I'm not excited about that. I don't think that's not me. That's not what live music is about. That's not the give and take. Mm-hmm. I want to feel the excitement from the crowd. That's what fuels me. So I guess I just got to wait it out.
So Pete, let me ask you this. Speaking of excitement, you've had a pretty long music career. Why don't you tell everybody out there a little bit about how you got into music and some of the highlights of your long career as a guitarist, singer, songwriter? Tell us your story a little bit.
Okay, Mike, do you want to tell them my story, or I'll do it. Everything he does is awesome. Just you Google him and bow to the king. How about that?
Just Google him. Interview over.
I'll do it. I've got it down. I've got it wired. So, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. My parents were auto workers. My dad died when I was 5. I was an only child. My mother worked at Chrysler's. And when you're a little boy, especially in the 50s, they would always ask you, so what do you want to be when you get big? And in the 50s, you had 3 television stations, maybe 3 radio stations. So your scope of the world was very small. So you could say, I want to be a policeman. I want to be a fireman. I want to be I want to be in the Navy. You didn't have much to pick from. You weren't being shown much. So at some point in the 50s, I saw Elvis Presley and I said, I want to be that. I want to be that guy. I want to be Elvis Presley. Now, this is my theory. Every decade or so, we have one of these guys, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Bruce Springsteen, whatever. A guy that's cataclysmic, that is an explosion, and everybody goes, yeah, he's my new hero. I didn't understand Kurt Cobain at first till I really listened to the music, and it was like, you know what? He's a spokesman for those kids.
Yeah,
those kids. It's like Dylan was a spokesman for me. So I wanted to be Elvis Presley, and my theory is that guys attached to that brightest shining star. Now, if you can't be Elvis Presley, which I couldn't, what would be the next best thing? Elvis's guitar player. Yeah, I'd like to be Elvis's guitar player. It's like, if I'm not good enough for that, maybe I could be Elvis's bass player. If I'm not good enough for that, and you go down the line till eventually you go, well, maybe if I studied real hard, I could be Elvis's attorney, which would be a horrible thing.
I love how the attorney's at the end of the line.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
This is always at the end. That's the part of the story where the bus drives off the cliff. Like
exactly, the last resort. So I was motivated by Elvis, and I find it funny. And Mike, I think you'll appreciate this. That now later on, I play a guitar very similar to Scotty Moore, and I've actually had a career of spanning blues and country like Scotty Moore. So that wasn't by choice. It was just happened that way. So I wanted to be in Elvis's band anyway. I became a guitar player. Bash my way through playing sports and not commercial music. I was never in Beatle bands. I was never in a band to make money. I was an artistic kid. So music was, once I started doing music, I was always trying to write something. I had other friends that were trying to learn the new Beatles song. I don't know the new Beatles song, but hey, I wrote this little thing. So I was using it as a creative outlet because I was also artistic, and I ended up going to art school when I got out of high school. But music took over as my choice for creativity. So that was the kind of the path I started on, and ended up, my mother retired from Chrysler's and she moved to Arizona, to Phoenix. And I used to drive back and forth in the winter. I'd go from Detroit to Phoenix. And after 2 years, I stayed in Phoenix through the summer, and I was in a band, a club, blues band, whatever, fun band. And we played a little bit as much as we could when you're 21 years old. And then I said, I've outgrown Phoenix. So I said, so me and a bass player decided, well, it's too far to go to New York. Let's go to Los Angeles. So we drove to Los Angeles in his Volkswagen bus. We slept in the bus on the streets wherever we could park for a couple of weeks. Finally pooled our money together, got a place in Hollywood. Started going to jam sessions, and LA is a place where everyone's from somewhere else, and they come from somewhere else and they create a story about themselves because you didn't grow up with them. Like if I was in Detroit doing my music career, I said, well, no, you're the guy that used to beat kids up on the football field and you don't have any talent. And no, you never were in that band because I grew up with these guys. But in LA, you could make up all kinds of shit. So you had all these new idea people, right? And it was fast friends, and the music scene, you know, in the 70s, if you think about it, was wide open. Hollywood was wide open. It wasn't, the thing about LA is it's not I mean, I know they got the Birds thing and the Laurel Canyon and the few little movies they made, but it wasn't specifically like New York was a jazz town, Chicago was a blues town, Memphis was a soul town. LA was a megapolis. It was just a big place. There was a lot of people. So there was a little bit of blues, you know, there was a little bit of jazz, there was a little bit of country music. And in those things, it was pretty authentic, except for the blues. The blues was a little more, I found, copied because there was a handful, Pee Wee Crayton and a few guys that were living out here. But for the most part, it was young white kids trying to play, you know, Little Walter note for note or B.B. King note for note, which I'd never experienced growing up in Detroit playing blues. We all kind of did our own thing. But there was a pretty healthy jazz scene at one time and a very good, healthy country scene that you didn't have to drive very far for because LA has the Hollywood Basin and then it has the San Fernando Valley. And once you get out in the valley, there's tons of people with horses and horse country, and not ranches per se, but plenty of people with horses that ride horses. So that's where the country music came in. I had factory jobs, horrible, shitty jobs, and I wanted to play. And a friend of mine said, hey, there's this really cool guitar player. I was like, okay, great, you got my interest. And we're playing at this country bar, and I had never gone to a country bar. In Detroit, a country bar meant I was going to get in a fight. It was going to be a fit.
Right.
It was, you know, a rough joint, honky tonk, redneck, whatever. So I thought the same thing in LA. It's like, yeah, okay. And I was a Detroit kid. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I was going to take care of myself, whatever. So I went to this club, and actually Jerry Donahue, which I think Mike knows, who was in the Helicasters, was actually playing. We were all young men. He was in the band, and some other guys, and there might be some other guys, I can't remember who, but my friend was the bass player. And I watched them play, and they were like doing like Buchanan licks and radical country licks and steel bends, and they play a blues, and then they play country, then they play Western swing, and I was like, man, this is not what I thought it was going to be a country. Right. They play Little Richard, you know, and it was white man blues, white man working class music. So I gravitated towards it, like, because I'd been putting little blues bands together, and, you know, being 23 years old and singing about picking cotton just doesn't quite work. You know, when you're doing blues now at, you know, I'll be 72, but now in the 60-year-old guys, like Rod Piazza is like the number one harp player. He's a 70-year-old white guy. There's no more. The black culture left that behind, and so it's second generation. It just doesn't. It's not as real to me. So I gravitated more towards country, and as a guitar player, like I said, I could go on stage in a country band. If we played Western swing, there would be 6th chords and 13s and 9 chords and some diminished. There'd be fun stuff to jazzy around a little bit. There's tons of stuff like 1 to the 5 chord, you know, straight ahead progressions that I could play, practice steel licks. There was, you know, trying to play like Albert Lee. There was trying to play like James Burton, who was like a much bluesier cat. Chicken picking, which chicken picking is like lives next door to chicken picking from Howlin' Wolf. I knew chicken picking from Howlin' Wolf. Now it's chicken picking in country music. So it's like, it was a big stew. And like I said, every set you'd do a blues or a slow blues, or you'd always do some Chuck Berry. You could practice so you could practice a smorgasbord of guitar stuff. And if you think about country music, 99%, let's take this new country shit off the map, but the real stuff, 99% of it was written on an acoustic guitar. Mm-hmm. It's guitar music.
Yeah.
Unless you have the money to hire a fiddle and steel, which you usually didn't, Guess who gets to play everything? The guitar player. You got
Yeah.
an acoustic guy singing, you got an electric guy, you got a bass and drums. And I was always in these 4-piece bands. So it'd be like Earl Thomas Conley, here comes the steel intro. Jay, we're going to do Emmy Lou. We're going to do a Chuck Berry. You know, I just play all night, play my shit all night and work. And really the thing that stuck in the most was the steel licks.
Was that something that just came out, you know, organically? Because, you know, you get a bunch of guitar players together and it's like, well, we don't have a steel player, so we're just going to bang chords out. But you guys obviously went, we're going to arrange this thing where all the stuff that's on the record, I'm going to play on the 6th string. You know, it seems like a lot of work to get to that point. Was that just something that everybody gravitated to, or did kind of guys get together and go, well, we got to play the steel lick, so how are we going to make it happen?
Nobody got together. It was more like this. Remember 6 Days on the Road by Taj Mahal?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Jesse Ed Davis played that first basic, that bend of the major pentatonic where you bend the 2 up to the 3 and you hold the 5 down, and it's just, you know, one little lick. Well, he started it as far as like not listening to like Curly Chalker or Chet Atkins or any guys that take the Nashville guys off the map, because that music was really segregated at that time. And being 19, 20, 21, I discovered country music through Sweethearts of the Rodeo by the Byrds and through, you know, Graham Parsons. I came in that door with my peer group, like, that were exploring country music. So that was the first sign of it. And then the other part was like, it was just imitating it. You know, you had I got a gig in a club. This is interesting. There was a bar in Ventura County, so it was about a 40-minute drive for me, but it was a really good band. The lead singer was from Texas. Everyone was older than me in the band. The bass player was good. The drummer came to America in Head, Hands, and Feet, which was Albert Lee's group. And he was an alcoholic and he had some problems, but he was a great drummer. And he had already, before I played with him, had already played with Joe Cocker and the Everly Brothers and stuff. He played with all 3 of them. So here I had a great drummer. I had an acoustic guitar player that knew all these great songs, and I had a bass player. Well, before I got the gig, there was a guitar player named Peter Climbs. And Peter Climbs was the guitar player. He played an ES 355. That's the like the B.B. King guitar. He had a deluxe with an Altec and a volume pedal, and he sounded like a steel guitar. He was playing these licks like steel licks and swells and stuff. And I mean, I walked in the club and my jaw, I went, what is that? And I had my little tweed rig and I was doing, and when we'd play a blues, I would tear it up. I was a really good blues player, but I was learning to shift that minor pentatonic to major pentatonic. And I was learning that. And because country is major, the 5 chord is usually not a dominant 7, it's a major 5. So it's very, and it actually is, if you want to be really technical about it, going from like E major to B major is actually a key change, because in this, the 5 chord in the key of E is B7, not B major. Anyway, so grasping that major shift from major to minor blues was the first thing I had to conquer. But this guy was playing like, I mean, I could keep up with him on all the blues, all the other stuff, but the steel licks were like deadly, just like I had never heard anything like it. He quit and he had a better paying job. So the guy hired me, and it took me, first of all, at least 2 months, if not more, to hear every song this guy knew. He had no set list. He'd get up on stage and they'd go, Everly Brothers. He'd go, and he'd just start playing, and he'd do like 3, whatever he remembered, he'd play 3 Everly Brothers. Beatles, he'd play 4 Beatles. Conway Twitty, he'd play 5 Conway Twitty. You know, Hank Sr., he'd play 3 Hank Sr. Merle Haggard. We had no set list, so I would wander, and he did all the like Texas Outlaws, like Waylon Jennings and all those guys, Charlie Daniels, all that shit. And this was when Urban Cowboy broke in the middle of that. And I remember getting this gig. I took a tape recorder every night and recorded every song. Every time the phone rang and it was him, I thought he was firing me. I was like, this is it. I was like, hello.
He's like, not cutting it, bro.
And I was just like waiting for this ain't working out, you know, and I was struggling. I didn't have the right rig. I had a tweed tweed pro with a 15. Anyway, so slowly I morphed my world. I got a volume pedal. I got a deluxe. And I also played harmonica, which was a plus because the other guy didn't play harp. And I was a good harp player. I could play kind of Mickey Raphael style, like not Charlie McCoy, but kind of bluesy country. So I got to be a little valuable and I could sing a little bit. And so I got in this guy's band and we played 11 nights on, 3 off for a year. 11 nights in a row. Monday, we had an off night gig in Santa Monica. So we'd play Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Ventura County. Then we'd go to Santa Monica when it was kind of loose. We played a pub bar where we could play loud and do what we wanted. It wasn't a country bar. And we played Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we'd start again. And we did that for a year. And in the middle of it, Urban Cowboy broke out. Every bar in Southern California, it didn't matter what neighborhood they were in, was a country bar. We had more work, and I would go to work every night with this great drummer, Pete Gavin, and he could just, when it was Everly's, he'd play the chuck. He had all the right grooves. He wasn't a hack. He was a top-notch drummer. Here's another great Peter Gavin story as a side, because you guys are music freaks. He grew up in England. He was older than me, and he was starting to become, in his early 20s, a well-known drummer. And he said a roadie guy came over to his house one day, knocked on the door, said, "Hey, Pete." And he was like, "Well, what's going on?" He goes, "Hey, Paige and a new guy are getting together. Paige, he found a new singer, and they want to put the Yardbirds back together. They wanted to know if you wanted to come down and play drums with them."
Huh.
And he had a job at the time. He had a job at the time with Robert Palmer in a band called Smokey Joe. He goes, "I'm doing pretty good with Smokey Joe with Robert Palmer." And he said, "I don't think I'm going to go down there and jam with you."
Oh, no.
Are you kidding me?
I bet he's kicking himself for that.
Well, he passed away, but I'm sure he kicked himself in the ass for a while for that. But I mean, Led Zeppelin, bro. Anyway, he's a great drummer, and I got to play with him every night, and it really helped my playing. And I really formed Pete Anderson on that gig because and the bass player ended up quitting, and then my good buddy Rolly Sally, who plays bass for Chris Isaacs for 20 years, became the bass player. So we had bass, drums, and guitar was killing. I mean, and we were young guys, but we were playing. We could play good, and we just tore it up. And that really was the cornerstone of how I started to become who I am. I cut back on the steel licks when I started playing with Dwight, because on a record we'd use a steel player, but I did some steel licks. But actually with Dwight, if you've heard stuff and go, "Oh, he sounds like a steel guitar," nothing like what I was doing back then. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had the steel licks buried.
Just so the Kingdom of Rock fans know, did Dwight see you in this band and go, "I'm stealing you for mine"? Or?
Well, he's not quite like that, but we had the Dwight story. He saw that band because we played he wasn't, he was duffing around like the rest of us, but we had a mutual friend named Bob Bernstein. Mm-hmm. He goes by Boo Bernstein. He's a steel player. He's a great steel player. So we had a mutual friend. I had played in pickup bands with Boo, and he had played with Dwight, and he had a tape of a recording that Dwight was doing, sort of a demo tape that had Jerry McGee on guitar. Jerry McGee from, he played with Roseanne Cash, but also from later in the Ventures. Anyway, and I hadn't heard a lot about Jerry McGee. I knew about Albert Lee and, Amos Garrett, and by then Ray Flack. And I was like, man, I want to hear Jerry McGee, see if I can steal something. So I got a tape from him, which was Dwight singing his songs with Jerry McGee on guitar. So I got to hear Jerry, but what stuck with me was these songs were great. And I mean, when I heard this demo tape, he had I Sang Dixie. And I Sang Dixie was on his third record and was a #1 record in America on the country chart. So this was quality stuff. And I'm like, God, these are great songs. Anyway, he had a falling out over a girl with Jerry McGee. And he called me up through Boo Bernstein and said, "Hey, I'm playing this big, supermarket turned into a country bar called the Cowboy out in Anaheim. And would you want to play guitar?" And I was like, yeah, sure. I've heard the tunes. They're great. So I went to his little house and we had like a little rehearsal, not much. It's so funny because it's Hollywood. The drummer was Ed Green. Okay, you don't know Ed Green, but his son is Brian Austin Green from Beverly Hills 91201 or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
He's like $100 millionaire or whatever. That's his son. So Ed Green was on drums, me, Dwight. I think Boo was on steel. Anyway, so we went out and played this big joint and big line dance club. And then Dwight was like, had just moved back from staying with his dad for a while in Louisville. And he goes, I want to go out and play more clubs. And I said, cool, I'm ready. I want to play too. So he would go out and hustle these gigs and we would play as a 4-piece. So it was Jeff Donovan on drums, myself, Dwight, and a guy named Gordon Shryock on bass initially, who was also engineering these demos. So that's how the Dwight thing really started to get going. Was
there a moment during that period of time when you started playing with a very well-known, successful artist? Was there a moment where you're like, wow, I've arrived, or some type of like epiphany where you're like, I can't believe this is happening?
I did have that, but I mean, not initially because we were nobodies. We just played. Yeah. The funny thing is that Matt, you'll enjoy this. Every club, the first record Dwight we made was called Guitarist Cadillacs, and it's got Jeff Donovan on drums, Brantley Kearns on fiddle, J.D. Foster on bass, myself on guitar, Dwight on acoustic, and then we had a couple of Glendy Hart and a few little guys sat in. But anyway, I think Ed Black on steel. Every gig we got with that initial band, we got fired. Every club gig. If it was 3 nights, we'd do 2. If it was 2 nights, we'd do 1. If it was 4, we'd do 3. I would come walking in the door for the gig, and Dwight would be taking his speakers out and say, where are we going? We got fired. Every single club, we got fired. Because we were playing, Bill Monroe and Merle Haggard, and we wouldn't play, Alabama and shit off the jukebox. The guy was like, I like you guys, but you just don't play the popular music. Anyway, long story even longer. I think Michael will enjoy this as a musician because this doesn't happen. So the record blows up. Dwight's a hit. We have two top singles, and everybody knows about us. I come back to LA. I go to this club in the Valley that we actually auditioned for and didn't get the audition. The guy was going, no, I don't want you guys in here. And we're getting like back in the day, the tape messages, the voice messages. I'm on the road with Dwight, we're playing everywhere we can. It was like a dartboard because it was like it took off in the book. You're playing a fair here, okay, get in the car, drive to Omaha, okay, drive to Florida. But we were going everywhere. It was hot, and so I would get all these messages like from my friends that were still my buddies, usually like drummers. It wasn't guitar players. It was like going, you're going to enjoy this. Your Guitarist Cadillacs is on the jukebox at the club you got fired from, and they're making the band play it. And these guitar players that are all jealous of your shit have to play your licks, and it's killing them. They're all fucking dying. I'm better than him. I knew that guy. He subbed for me. He's not that good. So right. Like, oh my God. So I come back to town, and I go to see my friends that are playing this one joint, the joint that we auditioned for and didn't even get the gig. So I go there, and hey, Pete's here. Hey, cool. And the place was packed, right? And I walk in. The club owner recognizes me because we'd already done 2 videos. He goes, hey, Pete Anderson. And I go, I didn't know who he was. Hey, man. And he goes, yeah, I'm Joe Blow. I own the joint. He said, let me buy you a beer, buy whatever you want, And I go, okay. And I'm not a drinker, whatever. I said, okay. So then he comes back and goes, we got you guys, man. I said, what? He goes, we got you guys. We got you guys in here. I said, you got us in here? He goes, yeah, I booked you. I mean, this is a joint. We're playing already fairs and shit. I mean, this is a joint, right? And so he said, yeah, we've got you in here on July 23rd. And the reason I remember that is July 23rd is my birthday. Yeah. I walk out the door of the bar. This is the old days. And there's a payphone on the wall outside the front door. I walk out the door, hit the phone, bang, called Dwight. I said, hey, buddy. He said, what's up? I said, you're never going to guess. He goes, what? I said, well, I'm down here at the whatever the place was and seeing my pals. And the guy, our booking agents booked us here. And not only did they book us here, they booked us here on my birthday. And he goes, fuck that, motherfucker. He went on. So he called up the booking agency and said, "Are you fucking nuts?" And not to cast aspersions, but we had this old school booking agent that if you could pay the price, you could book us. It was like they did Oak Ridge Boys. It's like, you want the Oak Ridge Boys for your backyard birthday party? Yeah, give me $50,000. Okay. Oak Ridge Boys will be there. So it was like, well, they paid the deposit. And it was like, I don't give a fuck about the deposit. Fuck that. So I went back in and drank on the guy's tab, set my buddies up, and just drove away. And it's one of the few times I was like driving away going, that's kind of sweet, man. That most guys don't get to have that happen in their life. And that was one of those moments. But the other thing you asked me about was once the this is going to work moment was we played around LA with Dwight. We got a lot of great press. Mm-hmm. The Blasters took a liking to us and Los Lobos did, and they both reached out helping hands. Like they would see somebody up and coming and say, hey, open for us. They were very cool with the scene. So we got to open for the Blasters, and they said, take as many dates as you want. We're doing a farewell tour where Dave and Phil weren't going to play together anymore. And you can open all the dates that you want. And I'm like, we didn't have a vehicle, so I sat down with Dwight and I looked, and they had New York and they had Houston. I said, let's do those 2 dates. Let's see what we can generate. Cause we were getting great press. I mean, it was bubbling up. Mm-hmm. So the first one was in New York. We flew there anyway, and we played the Ritz Ballroom. And in New York, whatever, this was probably in 83, the headliner would go on. I mean, the opener would go on at like 11 o'clock at night. The headliner was on at like 12. It's a late town. So we opened for the Blasters at the Ritz. We go on stage, we play. People know our shit because we've been getting college airplay. So they're actually singing along to the songs. And I'm like, and we had never, that's the first gig we had done outside of LA. And I'm looking around like, how do they know this? And I'm playing, and they're like, we're playing. We get done. The Ritz had walls on the side of the stage, and there was windows up here. And our dressing room was on this side of the stage. So I remember being up in the dressing room with the windows looking down on the stage. The Blasters were setting up, and we're in the dressing room. We just got done, and someone's beating on the door, and we're like, who is it? And we don't know anything about protocol. We don't have a road manager. We've never been on the road at this level, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I said, well, answer the door. And I was kind of the leader, being the oldest one. And it said, I forget the guy's name, but he was famous. He was a famous writer for the Village Voice. Henry somebody. Do you know Mike Henry?
No, sorry.
Anyway, he was like a celebrity, like Robert Hilburn, that kind of guy for the Village Voice, which is it's Henry, and I recognized his name, and I said, "Fuck, let him in." So I hooked him and Dwight hooked up, and I remember looking out at all this sea of kids, and I told the fiddle player, I said, "This is going to happen." No, I didn't know what this is going to happen meant.
Henry Miller, is it Henry Miller?
Maybe it was Henry somebody in the 80s.
Yeah, it might be Henry Miller.
Okay, so
he's on a list of writers for Village.
Okay, and so I know his first name was Henry. So I didn't know, to us, like Los Lobos was huge, and they might have sold 50,000. I didn't know what charts were. I didn't know what a gold record was. I didn't know what a platinum record was. We all looked up to Emmylou Harris. We dogged Emmylou. She was our West Coast country savior. So I told the fiddle player, I said, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to make a living at this. This is going to happen. There's something special going on. And it was that night that I realized it. I didn't know what it would be. We got bigger than Lobos. We got bigger than Emmylou Harris. We went triple platinum. We sold 25 million records and a lot of gigantic things. But after that, those were little steps we took. We were in the big leagues. Once you get up in that league, you run into somebody. You run into Rodney Crowell, and he knows Pete Anderson, and I know Rodney Crowell. We've never met. It's a different club. Mm-hmm. So it's just a unique experience.
Well, how did you go from being Dwight's guitar player to producing all of those records?
Well, I was producing all along. Like I was the guy that, like, if you and me had a band and there was 5 of us and we went in the demo studio, I was always like the idea guy, like, let's try this, or that's not quite working. And as you know, Michael, that's not always a comfortable spot to be in, because I've been with, drummers that tell me, don't tell me what to play.
Sure.
Well, you're playing the wrong fucking thing. What do you want me to say? But I call when I got to be the producer and I show up with a clipboard with my notes on it, I called the clipboard my mantle of authority.
Oh.
This is how you get paid. I'm holding the mantle. You want the job? Do what I say. I don't care. And I'm the kind of guy, I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you don't like me. I got a wife. I got a son. I got a couple of good friends. I'm cool. I hired a lot of guys that were my friends or became my friends, but I hired them because they were good. And I actually had to fire some of them because of different reasons, unfortunately, but they're still my friends. So I didn't have a problem with that. I have a hard time. I really had a hard time with it when I was a kid, but I was a leader. And I went to Catholic school, and the nuns would watch you on the playground, and they came up to me once in the 8th grade and they said, "You're a leader." And I'm like, "No, I'm not a leader." And they're like, "You're a leader. Kids follow you." And they wanted me to be like a priest, and go out and be a missionary and entice people to become Catholics. It was like, that wasn't in my mind. But I remember always being picked out, like, well, would you help me with this? And the kids will follow you, kind of thing. I shunned it when I was younger, but once I got into like producing records, one of my skills was I wasn't afraid to be the leader. Wasn't afraid to speak up. I had a big music catalog in my head. So by the time I got to Dwight, we decided, we were going to cut an EP instead of an LP because we didn't have any money, and that I was the producer arranger. And we sort of had that agreement like right from the get-go. So, and I realized once that took off, because I'd been producer arranger on other little projects prior to Dwight, and I knew my way around the studio. But I realized once that Guitarist Cadillacs as an EP started to take off and then became an LP, and now I had quote unquote produced and arranged a record on Warner Brothers Records and had 2 #1 hits, that was a whole new ball game for me. So it was like there was a point where Nashville tried to, get Dwight to come. We had the EP out, and they said, his management said, "Hey, we've given it to Emery Gordy and MCA Records, and they've agreed to let you come down here and cut some demos." And I'm like, and Dwight called me up and he goes, "Hey man, the Halsey agency called and they got an in at MCA Records Nashville. Now we had the EP out and we were getting successful press, but we didn't have a major deal." And they said, "Emery Gordy's going to produce it." And he said, I asked them to let me bring you with me, so you could come and play guitar on the demos. And I said, I've been in the studio before where somebody didn't want me there, and that's not what I do. That's not what I want to do. I said, I won't hold you back. I think it's great. Go give it a try. I said, but let me ask you something. Let me ask you one question. He goes, "What's that?" I said, the EP we cut? He goes, "Yeah." It had South of Cincinnati, I'll Be Gone, Ring of Fire. It was all good. It was 6 good. I mean, we had Honky Tonk Man and Guitarist Cadillacs. We had songs on there. I said, "Are there?" And I knew his catalog. And I said, "Are there any songs on this record that we've done that are better or not as good as the other ones you've written?" And Dwight's the kind of guy, he loves all his songs. He loves all his children. It's like, no, he knows he's a great songwriter. He's a great craftsman. He knows he's a great songwriter. And those early songs were written purely out of inspiration. I mean, he's a craftsman now where he could sit down and, song doctor and mechanical it, But those songs, like I sang Dixie, I mean, that's a brilliant song. It's a brilliant story. Johnson's Love is a brilliant song. So he knew that he was a great songwriter, and all of his songs he thought were of the same quality. So he was like, "No, I think they're all just, there's not, if they don't like South of Cincinnati, why are they going to like Johnson's Love?" Anyway, so I said, well, then they're kind of telling you that they don't like your songs, because you're going to go down there and play more songs that you think are better than the ones we cut. He goes, yeah, you're kind of right. Anyway, so I left it. That was a crossroads. Like, that was either like I was going to be part of Dwight's career or I would never be part of his career. Maybe something could have fallen apart and we started over. So About 2 hours later, man, the phone rings. Hey, what's up? It goes, fuck that shit, man. I'm not going down there. Fuck those guys. They don't like my songs. Kiss my ass. So it's
it is interesting, and it's great that Dwight's career went and your career went in a good direction. But when a record company calls, and especially in those days, and goes, yeah, come on down, and they take over the production and they start suggesting the songs and stuff. That's been good for some people and bad for some people. It's it's great that your antenna was well focused on what would be bad for Dwight.
I had that happen with Jim Lauderdale. If you know who Jim Lauderdale is like one of the top country songwriters alive. Mm-hmm. Same thing. I cut a whole record with him, and they finally got a deal. And then they go, "Do you got any more songs?" I'm like, and I told him and his manager, "Do not send them more songs. Mm-hmm. You don't have songs that are better than these songs. All you're doing is prolonging it." And they sent more songs, and his career in the beginning was tortured for like 3 years. And that record ended up coming out as an import through Germany, and everybody raved about it. It was like, one of the biggest disappointments is in the music business is having back. It's not that way anymore, but you would have people sitting between you and your future that weren't qualified. They weren't qualified to say if you were good or bad.
Now it's people with masks, people not wearing masks keeping you from your future.
Right.
Yeah.
They know the doctor.
Pete, since I've known you, how you work with bands in the studio. It's interesting because I know that you want what you want, and you're very forthcoming about how you say it, which could scare the shit out of a lot of artists. And a lot of artists can go, man, that Pete just told me to do this shit, and I don't want to do it, blah blah. But but everybody holds you in high regard as a producer. But you're probably one of the scariest producers, I think, because you just walk in and go, here's how we're going to do it. And like you said earlier, that ain't the right drum beat. Change it. How do you kind of negotiate that? Balance of being able to go, you need to do what I think the vision of this record is. I'm going to tell you exactly how this is. At the end of it, you're still going to like me.
Well, that's one little funny sidebar to getting older. There's a guy named Ask Zach who does a pod thing for Vintage Guitar, and he did an 18-minute piece on me the other day. And very nice, everything about it. And I didn't interview for it. I just said, hey, look what happened. It showed up. And I thought I was being eulogized. I felt like, did I die? So it was sweet. And like for you to talk to me about my reputation, because I don't hear that stuff, right? And I think and you're one of my top guys. So coming from you, it's like, what? Okay. But I have a couple of tricks that I use, and you are right. I come from punch the time card, get over on that fucking drill press, and go to work, and quit fucking around. You got to pee before you fucking come in here and hit the punch card. We're going to work. I'm a Michigan auto worker. I was an auto worker when I was a kid. I worked, on a time card by the hour. So I have that, and I don't know how many band interviews I lost. I know I lost one that sold millions. I can't even remember their name. What their name was, but I had a lunch with them, and I think I scared the shit out of them, and I was being nice. I got a call one time. This is another one. You'll like this one. John Doe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, John Doe was in the Jerry Lee Lewis movie playing bass with Dennis Quaid. Anyway, so he was writing songs, and he was down in Memphis. And this hotshot A&R guy calls me up. He goes, I want you to do a record with John Doe. And I was like, okay, well, I know John from the scene, and we're kind of buds and everything. And a little bit, we know each other. It would be fun. He's a nice guy. So he says, I'll give you the cassette. So he gives me the cassette. I listened to like 9 songs. He had 1.5 songs on there. He had one song that I said, okay, we'll cut that. And a half of another one that needed work. So I went back to the guy, and this is when X had broken up, and and John Doe, I think he was at Asylum, and the A&R guy got into a bidding war to sign John Doe to Asylum. And I went back to him, and he goes, "Okay, did you listen to the tape? What do you think?" And I go, "You got 1.5 songs." He went, "What? 1.5? Fucking, are you? I didn't get in a bidding war for 1.5 songs." He went off the hook. I said, "I'm sorry, you got 1.5 songs, buddy." So he was like, "Will you meet with John? He's going to be in town." I said, "Absolutely." I meet him at the office. And now it's like me and you, Mike. It's like we're two guys we're on the other side of the tracks from these guys, right? We're musicians. And so I said, "John, what's the fucking deal?" And he goes, "Well," he said, I never had a major deal," because he was with X and they kind of, bang those art records out. So he said, "The way I figured it was," I said, "I'd only put one good song on the record, because that way everyone at the record company would agree that was the one good song, and they'd promote the shit out of it." And I said, "Dude, you don't know the record business. You're going to have 5 different, nobody's going to even pick that as the best song. It's going to be destroyed." I said, "You got way too much confidence in these people." So that story about him yelling at me, but to get back to what you said, because I was a dad, my son was born when I was 19. So when I really started producing records with Dwight, my son was, like 15 years old. So I would use like dad tricks in the studio, and I would always give somebody 20 minutes. Like, you got 20 minutes to fuck with your part, unless I knew way in advance this wasn't the shit. Now, I hired an engineer when I started working with Dwight, and I said, "I'm going to hire you to work with me on these records. I have one rule you have to agree to." He goes, "What's that?" And he was getting, Dusty Wakeman, he was getting started too. I said, "If I quit, you quit. If I walk out the door and said, 'Fuck you, fuck this project,' you walk out with me. Don't undermine me. Don't stay there and go, 'Oh, engineer for you.'" He goes, "Nope, I'll back you up 100%. I said, "Okay, you got the gig. I couldn't care if he could plug in a microphone. I didn't give a shit." So I hired him. But I had this 20-minute rule that I would give out. But then I hired people that were my friends that I knew musically. Now I'm a mid 38, mid 30s guy. So I kind of had the studio is a war zone. And there's the artist, the producer, and the engineers, and the musicians. And you have to coalesce your troops. So I wanted my own engineer. I wanted a studio I was friendly with that wanted my business, and I wanted my musicians. And I could win a battle with that if there was a battle. So I could get away with that. In the case of Dwight wasn't there a lot. So we would rehearse for a week or 2 weeks, and this is what we're going to do. And he'd go, "Okay, great, cool. Call me when you need me." And he'd come down in the afternoon, or he'd come down at night if he was going out to dinner. Other than cutting the scratch vocals, he wasn't there a lot. So I was working alone, and I was working with people. Like I said, I had the mantle of authority. I had my clipboard. It's like, "I'm paying you, buddy, so I don't like this. Use a stick and a brush, get rid of that snare drum, use this hi-hat." And they would go, "Okay." And they all knew this is a step into the big leagues, and this is how it works in the big leagues. It's not like, "Oh, hippy dippy." I mean, there's hippy dippy shit, when it's a band. This wasn't a band. These were hired guys that ended up playing in the band, but they were hired session guys to play on those records. So,
but even when you work with a band, though, it's funny you mentioned the kind of the warfare thing, because you plan the session like a general looking over a map of the campaign. You've got everything worked out before you walk in there. You make sure that the band knows exactly what they're going to do before you even let them get in the studio, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Organization was a big skill that I had. I was pretty logical and organized, and I'd done enough sessions. And I didn't want to be a session guy, and I wasn't a session guy, but I did a lot of demo sessions and stuff like that, duffing around LA. You're going to run into that. And I had experienced a bunch of stuff that I go, "God, that's no fun. God, I don't want to do that. Don't call me down here at 9 o'clock to listen to the kick drum for 2 hours. I don't want to, go get chips and a soda pop and sit in the lobby of this shithole demo studio while you're trying to get the kick drum right sound on the kick drum. Call me when you need me." All that shit that was time sucking and energy sucking and creativity sucking, I stored that away in my head, and I was like, when I get my chance, that's not going to happen. And even once we had a little more success, like where I was about 2 years into producing, like I was really rolling, I would book the studio on Sunday. I would start tracking on a Monday. So we would rehearse. We'd go into a rehearsal studio for at least 5 days, maybe more. Let's say it was Monday through Friday. We'd have Saturday off. Sunday, I'd book the studio to set up. So Sunday, we'd go in, set up the studio. We'd eat. We'd jam. We'd never play songs that were going to be on the record. We'd goof around, play blues, play this, play that. Everybody, you got your headphones? Because it was all headphones. It was analog days. Everybody got your tones. You got your right. Everybody cool. All right, let's go home. We'll come back tomorrow. I'll see you at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock in the morning, show up, all cleaned up, have a cup of coffee, bullshit around. You guys want to cut one? Yeah, it's there. Set up, put your phones on. Bam! And you get that right out of the box shit, right? Like, boom, I'm excited to play this fucking song. Let's get it down. And you have everybody's attention. So I really started doing that back in the analog days where I could set up. I was always one of my big dreams was I want to just put the headphones on and play. I don't want to even touch my guitar. I just want to grab it, turn it on, and play. It's nothing more exciting than that. So I had that organized. My notes are organized. The way I march through everything, which you've been reading about, is organized. So yes, as far as that goes, I don't think that might turn some people off. I mean, I have a funny Steve Forbert record. Steve Forbert is terrific, great songwriter. And he called me up and he goes, I love the Michelle Shock record you played, you produced. And I want to do a record with you. And I want to do it in the same place you did Michelle Shock. I said, cool, that's Capitol Studio B. That's where I work. That's where I always work. I was there every day for 5 years in a row. Capitol Studio B is like Buck Owens, but Miles Davis. It's the Frank Sinatra. It's the coolest, Neve, Studer, great engineers, the whole gag. Yeah. And it's 3 stories high inside, and there's a basketball hoop. And I like basketball, so I'd go out and shoot baskets while they were setting everything up. But I like the room for other reasons, but just to tell you how big it was. So Steve Forbert goes, let's go see the room you cut Michelle in. And Michelle's a very personal. That Short Sharp Shock record is usually her and one other instrument or 2 other instruments. So I brought him to Capitol and he went in there and he started looking around and he said, I fear this room. I said, what? He goes, I fear this room. I said, you fear this room? I said, this is where we cut Michelle. It's too big. All right. So now you're dealing with baggage. You're not dealing with common sense musical stuff. So we went to another studio called Track, which Emmy Lou used to use. Really nice studio, a lot of wood in there. And we cut the record over there. But Steve was very artistic, very artistic. So, and I handled it as good as I could. I kind of came apart a little at the end of that. As much as I love the record and love his songs, I don't do well with that. I don't do well with foo-foo.
Well, Pete, let me ask you a question.
Foo-foo, but Matt is actually over there. Where are you? That way. No, I can never get this camera thing right. But Matt is cutting a record now. I mean, Matt, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. I do actually have a question. The biggest thing that I have encountered, the biggest, let's see, not misinformation. A lot of artists do not know what a producer is.
Right.
Like they like, and there's so many different types of producers, the artist producer, there's the engineer producer, there's the organizational producer, the project manager type guy. There's all these different mentalities, and everyone that uses the label of producer probably thinks something different about themselves, So what would you say to somebody if they're like, Pete, I'd like you to produce an album for me. What exactly does that do? When I give you a paycheck, like, what do I get for my money? Right. Like from you, like, how do you help?
All right. So I've thought about this a lot and I've written about it, and Michael and I are working on it together. But first of all, I sympathize with you. And I've said that from the very beginning. It's like, somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I love the work you did on the Meat Puppets. And I go, I didn't do too much. I knew not to do too much, which was what I brought to the party, but I edited them. And I got them in tune. That's what I did. And if you weren't there, a fly on the wall, watching me work, now maybe my personality in editing them and my way I finessed it and did it all, and they were not difficult to work with. Kurt Kirkwood is a genius. He's lyrically a genius. So I sympathize with somebody, because if you didn't see me there every day, you would go, well, what did you do? How did you do it?
Right.
Now, when Dwight and I split ways, he ended up getting a deal with what was one of the biggest indie labels at the time. And there was an ex-hockey player / attorney, Cameron Strang, supposedly a nice guy, never met him, who was down here running the label. And he signed Dwight, and he gave him a lot of money, and he signed him for a 3-album deal or something crazy. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying me, but I'm saying also in the agreement, he said, oh yeah, you can produce yourself. Now this is a guy in the business handling money. Now, take me out of the equation, but it's like, you'd think that you would said, let me read the liner notes to your last record. Okay, Pete Anderson, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, mandolin, harmonica, percussion, bass, string arranging, arranger, horn arrangements. Who is that guy? Do you need that guy? Because your credits say acoustic guitar.
Right.
So problem one, if he was a record guy, he'd go, well, okay, you don't like Pete. Pete doesn't like you. We need a guy like that. We need a guy with those skills to work with you. Didn't happen. Catastrophe. So I sympathize with anybody when they're picking a producer. Okay.
Right.
Secondly, to tell you what a producer is, I've got a couple of, I'll give you a couple of broad menu grids, the way I look at it. First of all, I think there's only 3 types of producers. Now, I could be wrong in the modern world, but there's an engineer producer. That's a guy who's a good engineer, gets good sounds, has a little bit of musical skill, usually partners up with a band and helps the band create their vision. And usually somebody in the band is sort of producing with him. In other words, answering a lot of the musical questions and arrangements. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of engineer producers. I think it's not the best way to go. There's musician producers, which is what I am. So I've sat out on the floor with headphones on, sweated. Am I going to get this? Does this part work? Does this guy like me? Am I grooving with the band? I know what the musicians are going through. I know what the engineers are going through. I can arrange things. I can song doctor. I can do anything that is necessary to manipulate the music. As far as the technical part, I just hire some guys. There's engineering schools coming out your eyeballs. Hire an engineer anywhere, it's like, and if you get up there, you can get a guy with credentials. Same thing with a mixer. So that's who I am. The third type is John Hammond Sr. He is a musicologist. Do you know who John Hammond Sr. is?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Michael, you do, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, so John Hammond Sr. was an A&R guy, producer for Columbia Records, who's starting with Bessie Smith, Robert Johnson, Charlie Christian, move up, Bob Dylan, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Bruce Springsteen. He signed all those guys and produced them.
Right.
I mean, his grades are the greatest of any musicologist ever. He didn't play an instrument, but if he invited you to his house, he'd go, the second break that Charlie Christian took on T for Two by Benny on the Benny Goodman track? He'd go,
right.
Yep, here. He'd pull it out and play it for you. So there's guys like that. And that has, if the guy's super educated, that can work out for you.
Yeah.
I think in the world that we live in, where there's technical things going on, there's musical things going on, there's a collection of things, I think the musician producer pretty much is the classic guy to have. Personally.
Yeah. Kind of like a Swiss Army knife for somebody to fill in the gaps, to reinforce things, to choose things that are the right fit because they have experience. So it's like an experienced musician that is really knows a lot about a different type of music, or at least in your certain genre of music.
He should be moderately sober, and he should not have an attitude and a personal agenda, because that can happen
Right.
as well. Right.
Yeah.
I don't play guitar around kids that play guitar unless they ask me. I don't play on new records.
Yeah.
I don't want to demoralize them.
Yeah.
I'm not bragging, but I should be really good at my age. I've been playing for fucking years. So it's like, I go like this, kid. And they go, I can't do that. Well, I won't do that. It's like, hey, try this, try that. So the other way that I was going to explain it, which I've explained it in the stuff that Mike and I have been working on, is that I'm like the director of a film.
Mm-hmm. So
I choose the cameraman, I choose the locations, I work on the script, I hire the actors, I work with the star, and the whole thing is like I'm judging performances and creating technical situations to get these performances. And I mean, making movies now with cranes and everything, you can imagine what these guys are like. But that's what these directors of films do. So I think that being called a producer is a misnomer in the music business. I think you should have been called a director. And the producer in the old days, it was there was a producer and an arranger. Is how they would do it. So you'd have an engineer. The producer would be from the record company. They would come in and go, is everything going good? Are we doing okay? Do you need, can I help you with anything? And then they'd have an arranger, because they usually only had 2, 3, or 4 tracks. Those Buddy Holly records, they had to arrange them to get all that stuff on there. So you needed a guy to say, you play part this, you play this part, cut that in half, try this, try that. Because I was very fortunate to get to work with Norman Petty. Norman Petty produced Buddy Holly.
Right.
Petty was a blend of a great technical engineer plus a great piano player. So he had all worlds going for him. And
those days too, were which you've mentioned before, Pete, is that it's not like the arranger wasn't just the cat who figured out, well, here's the string section, here's the harmony. He actually arranged people in the studio, because there was 1 or 2 mics, and the drummer would be farther away from the microphone than the singer or the acoustic guitar. So on that. Arranging takes on a couple of different meanings there.
Yeah. Back, play with a snare drum on a newspaper or a chair, go to the corner of the room, turn around. I had a friend that played piano in the late 50s, and he said the reasons guys played really high because they couldn't be heard if they played lower.
Yeah.
You hear all that.
Yeah.
You couldn't read it if you played it an octave lower.
Yeah.
That's how the high piano stuff came about, because you wouldn't hear it. So what Michael did too, it's like where you're sitting in the room. So
there's that thing too where they claim that Bing Crosby wouldn't have had a career if the electronic microphone hadn't been invented, because they were singing through a horn, and if you could belt it out, you never got over the instruments. Bing would have had a chance.
Yeah, that changed everything when they had microphones.
Yeah, he learned how to get that extra silk in there. With that microphone.
You had to be Rudy Valley.
Yeah. Well, hey, we are getting we're actually a little bit past our time, but time flies when you're having fun, right? Right. So I wanted to give everybody a quick chance to say closing remarks. And Pete, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a privilege to hear about your story and gain some experience from all the great things that you've done with your music career. I hope everyone out here in Kingdom of Rock knows what a great treasure you are to the music industry. And again, thank you for being on the show.
That's Pete, not trying to kill you, by the way. This isn't a eulogy.
Oh yeah.
Still breathing.
Yeah.
Play. Yeah. So Pete, what do you got? Bring us home. What you got?
Oh man. What do you want to know? What I'm doing today, or just say goodbye?
Yeah. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where to find you?
It's awesome.
Tell us
about your new record.
Yeah.
My new record?
Yeah.
Oh, 60s with a twist?
Yeah. Well, that one, it's pretty good, I would say, right?
I hope so. That's an EP. I think the new thing is EPs, so it's not as big a punch to your pocketbook. But I wanted to make an EP of instrumental hits of the 60s with my band that I play with. I play with an organ trio usually every Monday at a Moose Lodge with a really cool bar. It's just the best hang. I needed a place to play, and I just went to this Moose Lodge, and I never told anybody I was playing there. And the cool thing is all these people showed up, and the people that showed up were people I met while I was holding my guitar. So it wasn't like I called my buddies to come down to watch me play. And being in town as long as I have, I mean, you know, like, hey, come and see me play. It's like you guys have seen me play for 20 years. It's like, there's nothing new. And every once in a while, my buddies would come and they'd sit in the back of the room and they'd be on their phones going, it's like, you're not watching the music. The people that show up there, it's like a mini concert. So it's been a real blessing for me. But I wanted to take that band into the studio, cut an instrumental EP, which we did, called 60s with a Twist. And it's all songs that were hits in the 60s. Our Day Will Come, Canadian Sunset, Ode to Billy Joe, In Crowd. I love it. It's got a lot of orchestration. It's got horns and strings on it. I'm really happy with it. That's the latest thing I've done in the studio. And then I'm doing a record with a girl called Sarah Shook and the Disclaimers. And Sarah Shook is a young woman from North Carolina, terrific songwriter, great phrasing. And I think it was one of those, you know, like, I found this record in my dad's record collection. Do you know who this guy is? It's like, who's Pete Anderson? Is he still alive? Let's call him. Kind of. I was like, when she called me, I was like, really? Okay. I mean, she's like maybe in her early 30s, but it was like, all right. Yeah. Are you sure? It's like, are you sure you got the right Pete Anderson? I'll give you a quick, I know we're running out of time, but I did a record once, and I was listening to Wes Montgomery. And Wes Montgomery had a tenor player way back in the day when he was playing with his brothers called Harold Land. Harold Land played tenor. And so I did this project, and I had a production assistant. And I said, I need Harold Land to play on this. And she goes, okay. I said, find him. He went to the Union, went around and around and around the block, got Harold Land on the phone. And I didn't realize that, like, you know, Harold Land was like semi-retired. You know, it was Wes Montgomery, for Christ's sake. I mean, it was maybe a late 50s, early 60s recording. Harold Land goes, no, you don't want me. You want my son, Harold Land Jr. So she calls me back. She goes, yeah, I got him on the phone. He said, you want to talk to Harold Land Jr.? I said, I don't know. His name's Harold Land. Ask him if he's the one that played with Wes Montgomery. So she calls him up. He goes, yeah, I played with Wes Montgomery. Finally, I twisted his arm to get him to come down to the studio. And it didn't, unfortunately, it didn't work out. You know, he was like, he got in the studio and he's warming up and he's playing. And I said, yeah, remember how you played on Hymn for Carl? And he went, oh man, that was 50 years ago. And I was like, oh shit. So I got a young guy from like Billy and the Beaters or something and said, hey, can you play like Harold Land? He goes, absolutely. All that smoky shit. So he came in and played. So it was, I don't know why I got on that tangent, but this girl discovered me. And so we have a real good simpatico. The record's kind of alt country, and it's really cool. And then I'm writing 2 books. I'm writing a book on my life, which is interesting, with Adam St. James, who's a music writer and worked with Hal Leonard. And then Michael has agreed to edit for me a book on how to produce a record. And
nice. I actually didn't know that.
Well, it's exciting because in our world, you know, if I drop Mike Molenda, it's like, what? It's like, I told Beth Merlis, who used to run GIT, I said, we were talking, and I said, I want you to read it before I put it. I want you to get some notes from you. And she said, okay. And I said, I got Mike Molenda to edit. She go, what? I said, yeah, Mike's editing it. I said, he makes me sound really professional. It's going to be really good because he's the #1 editor in the world. He was every guitar player in Guitar Player magazine, right? It's like, Mike Molenda? Mike Molenda's here? Mike Molenda, he wrote about you? So it's very cool. I'm super excited, and he's a great editor. So we're having a lot of fun with it, and I hope that's my my caveat off into the sunset, where I just show up at little colleges and do seminars on how to produce a record.
Yeah, dude. Well, when you get that done, we'll have you back on, and we can do a little talk about the book and stuff.
Yeah, we're closing in on it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thanks for holding out on me and not telling me that sucks. Mike's got irons in the fire everywhere, dude.
You know, I never talk about anything, but I apologize to you. It's like, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I'm actually just.
I mean, I'm the last guy to say I'm doing anything.
I know.
That's cool.
So, Mike, take us home. What do you got?
I just got to say, Pete, thanks for doing this, because you probably could have gone on for 3 hours and nobody would have been bored. So thank you so much. And yeah, we should have him back when the book's out, because I've kind of had a peek at it, and it's pretty fucking awesome. So
I'm excited. I'm super excited.
Well, hey, if you need to put your producing stuff into practice, I could let you do a trial run on my new song, just to help you out, bro. No, I'm just kidding.
The way that might work out, Matt, is because since you were in the military, because you better be ready for the general to make the scene, man.
Do you wear like combat gear when you come in there with the clipboard? Yeah. I can't wait for the book. Well, okay, so I just wanted to close out here and just say again, thank you, Pete, for being on the show. And Kingdom of Rock, we're going to start doing these broadcasts on Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every single week. We may have some one-offs as we get people that are not able to be on the show during that time, but we're going to book somebody every Thursday at 5 p.m. no matter what. So you can always come here, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we'll be here every Thursday at 5 p.m. We're going to release our episodes on Mondays. So I have one episode to release prior to this one, and then we're going to Pete's episode is going to be out on the podcast space for all the Kingdom of Rock subscribers that listen to us as a podcast. So again, I hope you guys are all doing great out there in the world of COVID, the post-COVID apocalypse of the music industry. And we're all going to just have to pull together and be creative and come up with ways to like help each other out. And part of that is
we could buy Pete's T-shirt, "No mask, no music," right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, all right. Well, that's going to be it for today. Kingdom of Rock out, and Mike Molenda, Pete Anderson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here, bye, Pete.
Bye, Michael. See you guys.